Okay, this is going to be lesson 10-2 notes. This is the first day for notes. Okay, so when we're looking at this, what I'm going to teach you to do is I'm going to teach you how to break down a square root, but not using necessarily your calculator, not coming up with a decimal answer. So what we're going to be coming up with is called an exact answer. And an exact answer normally has a square root left in it. Now, not always, but normally. Okay, so when I'm looking at the square root of 196, now when you plug in just the square root of 196 into your calculator, you're automatically going to get a 14 out. Okay, so now keep in mind that the basic definition of square root, so think about like the square root of 25. You guys would automatically tell me that your answer is 5. And where that is coming from is that you are taking 5 times 5. And remember, the definition of square root is one of two equal factors. So I have two equal factors right here. I have a 5 and a 5, so I have two equal factors, but I'm only using one of them. So what we kind of think of it as is pair up and move out. So I move the 5 to the outside, and that's how I get a 5 left. Okay, so it's kind of the same concept here, okay? So on 196, you technically are going to be breaking these down. So we're going to break them down into primes. So like prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, right? 1 times 5, 1 times 3, 1 times 2. So primes are just something that you multiply itself times 1, okay? So I'm just going to start with very basic, 196. Okay, I know that's divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide by 2 and get 2 and 98. Okay, then I'm going to do it again. Since I know 2 goes into it because it's even, I'm going to do 2 and 49. Now 49 will break down to 7 and 7. Okay, so now I'm looking pair up and move out. So I pair up my 2s and I pair up my 7s and I move them to the outside. Now, once you've broken something down, you can no longer use him. So the 196, the 98, and the 49, once you've broken it down, you can't use those numbers anymore. All you're going to be using are your end numbers. And again, they should be prime numbers, okay? So now when I take 2 times 7, look what I get. I get 14. Okay, let's try another one here. So if I look at 28, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and break down 28. I know 2 times 14 gives me 28. Now 2 is done. I can't go any farther here. Okay, that's a prime number. But this 14 I can go ahead and break down to 2 times 7. Okay, again, if you've broke it down, you can no longer use it. Okay, now do you have any pairs here? Well, if I look here, I have a pair of 2s. So the 2s pair up and move to the outside. So I have a 2 on the outside. Now this poor little 7, he doesn't have a buddy. And if he doesn't have a buddy, he doesn't get to get out. So this 7 is going to stay inside the square root. Okay, and so your answer will be 2 root 7. So again, these are exact solutions. It's exactly this. If you were to plug this into your calculator, a lot of you guys are probably getting something like 5.29 out. And that's awesome, but that's approximate. That's about what your answer is. This is exactly what your answer is, okay? Okay, let's try the next one here. So I'm going to break it down, okay? Again, I can see it's an even, so I'm going to go ahead and break it down by starting with dividing by 2. So I'm going to take 192, divide it by 2, and get 96. Okay, now 96, I'm going to divide that by 2 because it's even, and get 48. Now on 48, it does not matter how you break things down. Some of you will do like 2 and 24. Some of you do 6 times 8. It doesn't really matter, okay? You just need to come up with two numbers that multiply to get 48. Okay, so like I'm going to use 6 and 8. So now my 6 would go to 2 times 3, and my 8 would go to 2 times 4, and the 4 would go to 2 times 2. Okay, so now again, take out everything you broke down. Don't reuse those guys. If you broke it down, you don't use it. Okay, so now I'm just looking at my endings. Okay, I've got a pair of 2s. I got a pair of 2s. And I got another pair of 2s. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So I have an 8 on the outside because I had 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, now this poor little guy right here, this 3, he doesn't have a buddy. And if he doesn't have a buddy, he doesn't get out. So he's stuck on the inside. So my answer is going to be 8 root 3. Okay, let's try another one here. So I'm going to do 150. So I'm going to break down 150. And then this time I'm going to do 10 times 15. Now, if you want to do 2 and 75, that would work too. The 10 breaks down to 2 and 5. And then the 15 would go to 5 and 3. Again, if you've broken it down, don't use it. So now I'm looking at this. The 5s pair up and move to the outside. Okay, so I have a 5 on the outside. Now on the inside, I still have a 2 and a 3 left. Since they didn't have buddies, they don't get out. So 2 times 3 is 6. And I have a 6 left on the inside. So my answer is 5 root 6. Okay. All right, same thing when there's variables. So we're still going to go ahead and attack the number first here. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2. So I'm going to take 112, divide it by 2, and get 56. All right, and then if I break this up, I could break this to like 7 and 8. And the 8 would go to 2 and 4. And then the 4 would break down to 2 times 2. Okay. All right, so now pairs. Well, I got a pair of 2s, and I've got another pair of 2s. Again, do not use the ones you've broke down. If you broke it down past that number, don't use it. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4 on the outside. And on the inside, I have this poor little 7 left over. I'm going to use yellow there. Poor little 7 used over. So I'm going to keep the 7 on the inside. Now, we have to look at the variables. Okay, so here I've got an n squared. So realize that n squared is just saying n times n, right? Pair them up and move them out. So I have one pair of n's that have moved to the outside. So I'm going to put an n on the outside there. So my answer is 4n on the outside, radical 7. And that's my final answer. Okay. All right, let's try again. So first off, let's go ahead and start by breaking down my 24. So like 2 and 12. 12 would go to 3 and 4. And 4 would go to 2 and 2. Okay, so again, pair up and move it out. Now, don't reuse the ones you broke down. Okay, so when I'm looking at my numbers here, I've got a 2 that moved out. On the inside, I have this 2 and 3 that didn't have buddies. So since 2 times 3 is 6, I've got a 6 left in on the inside there. Okay, so now x to the third. That means that I have 3 x's. So again, we're still looking for pairs. So I have one pair that's going to move to the outside. So I have an x on the outside. And then this poor little guy, just like these 2s and 3s down here, didn't have anybody. Well, he doesn't have a buddy either. So this poor little guy's got to stay on the inside. So I'm going to have one x left over on the inside. And that's going to be my answer. Okay, so number 7. Okay, let's start by breaking down my 12. So I'm going to go to 3 and 4. And then 4 would break to 2 and 2. Again, don't use things you didn't break down. Or sorry, don't use things you broke down. Okay, 2s pair up and move to the outside. So I'm going to have a 2 on the outside. And then I have a 3 still left on the inside because he didn't have any buddies. All right, so now I'm looking at my x's. I've got x to the third. So that means there are 3 of them. I can pair up and move out one set. So I've got one x on the outside. This poor little guy didn't have a buddy, so he's stuck on the inside. All right, now let's take a look at your y's. I only have one y. He does not have a buddy. He cannot go anywhere. So the y stays on the inside, and this would be your answer. Okay. All right, last one here. All right, so this one, the square root of 36. If you know that the square root of 36 is 6, awesome. Then you've already got a 6 on the outside of that square root. Okay. Now, if you didn't know that or you just weren't thinking about it, okay, well, 36 goes to 6 times 6. This would go to 2 times 3 and 2 times 3. So the 2s would pair up and the 3s would pair up. And notice, when I take out the ones I broke down, there's nothing left over. So what is 2 times 3? It's 6 on the outside. Okay, and there's no numbers left over on the inside. Okay, now go to your x's. So I have an x. Well, that poor thing doesn't have a buddy. He can't pair up and move out anywhere, so the x stays on the inside. All right, now y's. Oops, that looks like an x, doesn't it? Let's try that again. So now my y's. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have a pair here. I have a pair here. So that means I have 2 pairs of y's, so y squared. There's no y's left over, so there's no y's left over on the inside. And that is my final answer. All right, and that concludes lesson 10-2 notes.